As you might have been able to tell from the icebreaker tags, context is really hard to ask a question about. It's very abstract, at least for me, but it's everything. Context is everything. Imagine your typical morning coffee or tea, how it tastes and the way it makes you feel. Now imagine being on a remote island, sun rising, with that same drink in your hand. That sip is unlike anything you've ever tasted. That's context. When we feel something is out of context, it's because there's a mismatch in the intention, behavior, and environment. Looking at the Mona Lisa in a dark basement versus the Louvre surrounded by people taking photos creates two different memories. Personally, I prefer the basement, but this month's global exploration of context is chosen by our Minneapolis chapter and illustrated by the great David Schwen. So, audience takes the stage. This month, we wanted to do something a little bit different and also thank our audience and our community for your love and support this year. We don't typically take applications for speakers, but we did invite all of you to apply to speak this month, and we have gotten so many great ones. Thank you everyone who submitted, and it was tough to narrow down. But let's go ahead and get started and meet our speakers this month. First, we have Anna Quinlan. She is a freelance copywriter and writer focusing on health and fitness as tools for self-empowerment. It's the never-ending goodness of the great outdoors and people who kick ass, especially women. She was born and raised in Oak Park, spent a decade in Santa Barbara where she earned a degree in kinesiology and built a career in advertising and medical sales. Then she returned to her hometown with her husband and added 2 sons to the mix. 2 years ago, she left her corporate job to pursue a lifelong love of storytelling, finally working up the guts to turn the hobby into a full-time gig. Anna believes sweat cures almost everything. Time is never wasted outside, and good stories are worth the toil to tell them well. Please welcome Anna Quinlan.
Hi, am I on? Is this thing on? Cool. Hi guys. I'm so excited to be here. I love Creative Mornings. I always walk away from these talks so inspired and somehow even more in love with Sacramento and this community. So I'm seriously pumped to be here. And pumped to be here for Creative Mornings birthday celebration. Champagne on a work day. And it's also my birthday. I turn my birthday's next week. And this month actually marks the 126th birthday of the sport of basketball, which is actually what I'm going to talk to you guys about today. Right? You saw that coming. So I majored in kinesiology in college, as Rebecca mentioned. And as part of that major, I took a course in sports history. And when we studied the history of the sport of basketball, there was like a little tiny tidbit in the textbook that sitting there as a college student felt kind of like a revelation. And in the nearly 2 decades since then, I've thought back to countless times. And that's the story that I want to share with you guys today. So first, a little background, a little context, if you will. Basketball was invented by a guy named James Naismith in 1891. James Naismith was a college coach and educator in Springfield, Massachusetts. So in the harsh New England winters, it was too cold to play football and baseball outside, which were the main sports that they were playing at the time. So the director, I felt like something happened with my brain. I'm so bad at technology, you guys. There's like a black cloud over me. I'm sure I'm remembering everything. So the director of the school that James Naismith was working at that winter, he tasked him with inventing an athletic distraction, is what he called it, that they could play indoors in the cold winter that would keep the students in shape and that wouldn't have like a high occurrence of injury. That's why they couldn't really play football indoors. So he gives them 14 days to come up with something that they can do indoors. As creatives, we know, right? Like sometimes a short deadline is like the thing that works the best. So in the setup of the gym at the time is that around what would be the second story of the gym is this track on the interior perimeter of the gym. So if you were running around the track, you'd be looking down on the main floor of the gym. So Naismith takes 2 peach baskets that were discarded by the school cafeteria. He nails them up on either end of the track, essentially creating the first basketball court. And he drafts up a list of 13 rules, and those first teams are 9-on-9. And on December 21st, 1891, the very first game of basketball was played. So, but here's the thing that got me, here's the thing that stood out to me as a college student. Those peach baskets that he used, that he made the first hoops out of, they were fully intact, the bottoms were still intact. So next to each hoop, there's this tall ladder leaning against the track, and a guy standing on top of the ladder, retrieving the ball and returning it into play every time a shot is made. And this is how they played the game of basketball for nearly 10 years before it occurs to them to cut the bottom of the basket out. So sitting there as like a 19-year-old with no idea what I want to be when I grow up, I'm still waiting for that to happen, but I found in that story comfort and inspiration, because I saw in that story this idea that we can do the best that we can with what we have at the time, or create the best thing that we can with what we have at the time, with the knowledge and inspiration and resources that's available to us in that moment, and we can put it out into the world. Basketball was kind of an instant hit. Within the first 7 years, there was already a professional league. But we don't have to be stuck with it like that forever. We can evolve and adapt and improve over time as we have a new idea or a better idea. I think I'm supposed to click to another slide. That's these guys, okay? That's the peach basket, that's the guy up on the ladder. Yeah, I'm not great at technology. But we can always essentially cut the bottom of the basket out over time as we have new information or understand ourselves or the world around us differently. So after college, I went into advertising sales and then medical sales and eventually marketing. And I really, for the most part, loved those jobs. I worked with some great people and learned a ton of valuable lessons. But I'd always loved writing. Since I was a child, really, it was just kind of like a lifelong hobby. And always found ways to kind of cultivate that on the side just for fun. From contributing to my college newspaper, to submitting articles under a pen name to the newspaper where I was an ad sales rep in my early career. To having a little personal blog that probably 10 people read back when like Blogger, what was it called? Back when that was a thing, remember that? But I never really thought of myself as a writer. That was not the context that I had for myself. I was in sales. I was doing pretty well for myself in sales, and I intended to grow my career in that space. Over time though, I just found myself more and more drawn to writing. I was always writing stories in my head, and it kind of just became more and more of a priority to get them down on paper. And I found myself eventually staying up late most nights after work, after getting my kids to bed, just to get these stories down. It just felt important. And then I started submitting them to some publications and more publications, and then started helping some companies out with some copywriting, and it just kind of grew. But in all the years since I had been that college student feeling comforted and inspired by that peach basket story, it had never occurred to me that maybe I could make a living as a writer. Something as simple as just trying to do the thing that I love and make that a profession just was not on my radar at all. But then there I was, and it kind of was on my radar. And I wondered if I had the guts to do it, which, as you can imagine, was terrifying. But I thought back to James Naismith and those early years of basketball, playing 9-on-9 with 13 rules, and the original rules, dribbling wasn't even allowed. And then I thought about the guys on the ladder next to these peach baskets. And then I thought about what basketball had become, what it looked like in my life. Remember these guys? I thought about what I had seen basketball do here in Sacramento, what it had done going to games with my dad. And I knew that, it's okay to make a change. So 2 years ago, actually 2 years ago this month, I left I quit my job and I went on my own as a freelance writer, which was terrifying and certainly not without some growing pains, and I'm very much still making my way. But for me personally in my own life, that's a change that has totally improved the game. Oh, I'm probably at my time. I hear that timer. I'm almost there. So the two things that felt like such a revelation to me about that story when I was sitting there as a 19-year-old, not knowing what I wanted to be when I grew up, and kind of the two things that I hope you guys will take away from this just over 7-minute talk, are one, that I don't think our stories are ever really finished. I think there's always room to kind of rewrite it a little bit, to change it a little bit, to make an improvement. And two, I think sometimes that the very best plot twists are so simple that they're right in front of us for years or even decades before they occur to us. Something as simple as trying to do the thing I love professionally, or something as simple as just cutting the bottom of the basket out. So that's the story I wanted to share with you guys today. Thank you guys so much. Happy birthday, Creative Mornings. Cheers.
Thank you, Anna. That was awesome. Okay, next we have Ryan Walton. Ryan runs daringtodad.com. You've heard of mommy bloggers, but there aren't a lot of daddy bloggers out there, and he is holding a space to have conversations about all things fatherhood. He's a 30-something father of two. He is a recovering evangelical and the owner of Salon Paisley in Midtown with his wife, Samantha. And he's also one of the 600,000 people in the United States who suffer from Meniere's disease. Am I saying that right? Meniere's? Okay. He writes about the intersection of fatherhood, faith, and art. Ryan enjoys discussing all things that our kids will one day talk about in therapy. And that's okay. They got to have something to talk about. Thank you. Let's please welcome Ryan.
All right, good morning. Am I on here? We going yet? Hear me? Yeah, good? Cool. Thank you, Rebecca. Thanks for what you are doing in the community and the hard work that you and your team put into this every month. It's important and it's good. I'm humbled to share the stage this morning with just two brilliant women, Anna and Lindsay. Thank you as well. And thank you for sacrificing your morning to come and hear and engage with these stories. Here we go. This is the remote. This is my context. This is my unit. This is the Walton clan of Sacramento. It's my wife Samantha, my 5-year-old son Rhodes, and my 6-month-old daughter Gemma. Samantha and Gemma are here. I think they're in the back. There she is. She's awake too. Look at those cheeks. So my context is fatherhood and parenting. And the interesting thing about parenting is we a lot of times operate within the context of our children and their reality based on their level of development. And but one of the complicated things is when our context as adults, and maybe even sometimes our stuff, our junk, collides with theirs, which brings me to the story I want to talk about this morning. I love this time of year. I don't know how many big Christmas holiday fans are out there. I know not everyone enjoys it as much, but once Thanksgiving ends, it's on in the Walton house. I love everything about it. I love the crisp weather. I love the lights, the food, the music, the movies, the stories. I enjoyed a multitude of expressions. I love the silly stuff to the more mythical side of the Christmas season. I had beautiful experiences as a child, and it's something I want to impart to my own family as well. Which leads me to the story I want to tell this morning about the Sunday after Thanksgiving. This Sunday fell right in between our Thanksgiving break at my parents' house and a work trip I was about to take on that following Monday morning. We had it all figured out. This was going to be the morning that we were going to go out. We were going to wake up early. We were going to get our Christmas tree before the rain rolled in that day. We were going to come home. We were going to make cookies, turn on the music, just like full Christmas explosion in the Walton house. We had it all planned out. The anticipation was palpable. Expectations were high. How many parents are in the room? Any parents are in the room? Okay, cool. So maybe like 40% of you might know where the story is going. It all started when Rhodes, my 5-year-old, started getting really impatient with the decorations. Like he's sitting there waiting with the ornaments. Didn't quite understand that, we had to trim the tree first. We have to get it in the house, put it on the stand. We wrap the lights first. So he's getting really impatient. Another thing that my 5-year-old has taken up this hobby this year of inserting like really inappropriate words into Christmas carols. Like this day, we couldn't get him to refrain from singing Rudolph the Red-Nosed Penis. And like we have a pretty open policy in our house about talking about like body parts, like in more like a discovery, like question-based way. This was not that. This was him trying to like get under our skin, and it was working. Now, my wife wasn't feeling 100%, and so, when you're not feeling really good, your threshold isn't really so high. So she's getting frustrated with Rhodes and starts dealing out the consequences, like screen time and no cookies and blah, blah, blah. And I'm in order to keep my Christmas dream alive, I'm saying no. I'm trying to calm her down, which always works. It did not work. And so all of a sudden now, my wife and I are fighting about how to deal with my unraveling 5-year-old. And I just kind of watch my Christmas dream slowly crumble before me. And everything is just noisy and clanging. I even turn off the music, and I'm frustrated. So I finally tell Rhodes, my 5-year-old, I say, hey, buddy, we need to go back, and we're going to have a conversation in the back. So I take him back. We walk back to his room. We walk in. Now backing up a little bit, my son has this ukulele that he enjoys playing sometimes, and on several occasions has used it when he's gotten really frustrated. He's actually hit my wife and I with the ukulele, and it hurts. And so I turn and to close the door, and he grabs the ukulele, and with all of his 5-year-old might, swings it and cracks me right in the arm. Without hesitation, I grab the ukulele out of his hand and break it right over my knee. Some of you are probably feeling so much better about your parenting skills right now. In fact, as a proof point, I have it. And what makes it worse is it's kind of like a family heirloom. So if you're watching this, I'm sorry to my in-laws. Now, even after the moment, walking away, there's 5 seconds of silence and then just sheer meltdown. He just continues the rage. I walk away, and even as I walk away, I'm still 50-50 on whether that was a good decision or not. On one hand, I'm okay, he needs to learn that people have limitations, right? On the other hand, I just Bo Jacksoned my son's ukulele right over my knee. Chaos is around us all the time. Chaos is, sometimes it is really obvious. Political unrest, injustice, war, tantrums of 5-year-olds. Often chaos is internal. It's anger, it's rage, it's shame, it's fear. Chaos exists in our vocations, unformed ideas, maybe unclear process, dysfunctional teams. If there's one thing that I know about creativity is that it's about turning chaos into order. It could be using poetry to express the pain of addiction or heartache. It's maybe pursuing a moment of solitude to repress anger. Maybe it's helping a client organize fragmented ideas and put them into something that makes sense. One of the oldest stories of the creation of the world is this idea of creator over formless and void turning into order and into organization. So after the tears had dried and we all calmed down a little bit, we had a choice to re-engage and choice to take that chaotic moment and create something together. And so I sat my son down and I told him, I said, hey, buddy, I am so sorry for losing my temper and breaking your ukulele. That was not right of Daddy. And I'm not a perfect person, and I try as best as I can to follow the rules that Mommy and I set for the house, but I'm going to fall short sometimes, and I'm so sorry. And I asked him for his forgiveness. But I also said, what did you learn in this moment? And, in a typical 5-year-old fashion, he's like, no, don't hit people. So that's right. That's right. That's true. But that also, hey, buddy, people have limitations, and even the most kind people aren't going to sit there and let you hit them with objects. So we had this moment, and every chaotic moment provides us a choice to just simply react or to create. We can just react all the time to the chaos around us and just be tossed around like leaves on the wind, or we can step into the mess and create. React and create Both are words made up of the same letters, but with two different paths. Fatherhood provides a lot of opportunity to step into the chaos and create moments of learning. And so whatever context you're in, my hope is that we have the courage to see the opportunities that provide us a chance to enter the chaos and create order and embrace that kind of creativity. Thank you so much.
Oh, we didn't get to see Walton Family Christmas. There's a couple more sweet moments. daringtodad.com. Next, we have Lindsay Birch. Lindsay is an artistic producer at B Street Theater, where she specializes in the development and production of new works and contemporary plays. In her time at B Street, she's directed 10 equity productions. She's directed and written 4 touring productions and produced a 3-city international tour to India. She's cast over 50 productions and cultivated B Street's relationship with the National New Play Network. This fall, Lindsay was honored as one of Sacramento Business Journal's 40 Under 40 for her contributions to B Street and the arts community in Sacramento. Please help me welcome Lindsay Birch.
Thank you. That's such an official bio. I'm a lot more fun than that, I promise. Good morning, everyone. Thank you to Ryan and to Anna. It's incredibly inspirational to hear the two of you speak about your paths. And also a big thanks to Rebecca and everybody here at Creative Mornings for hosting not 1, but 3 speakers on their birthday. I think that's pretty amazing. And it's an honor to be included among such a great group of individuals, not just today, but in the past 13 sessions. I think it's really amazing what you guys are doing, so thank you for that. Yes, that's me. Where's the remote? Oh, there it is. Okay. I'm an artistic producer at B Street, and we're getting ready to move into our new space, which is just a few blocks from Clara, so we're going to be neighbors, so I'm very excited about that. And people ask me what an artistic producer does, and I tell them it's basically a fancy title for somebody who does everything, specifically all the stuff other people don't want to do. So that's essentially my job is casting, directing, play selection, audience development, marketing, basically anything that you can think of that has to do with theater, I probably deal with it at some point. So that's me. And so obviously we're here today to talk about context. And so I created this, the intersection of art and context, because apparently I was doing a classroom presentation here for you this morning. But I thought it was really fitting for me to talk about context as an artist, because there's many artists in the room. Everybody here is an artist, I think. And I felt like context was the perfect topic, because without context, art lacks any meaning or impact. Art basically can't exist without context. And so a smart person on the internet said this, and I'm actually not really sure who it's attributed to, but they said, whether economic, philosophical, social, or cultural, the context in which an artwork is created and the complicity of the artist within that context is intrinsic to his meaning. And they have the example, a street artist, by definition, is determined by the very context in which they create and exhibit their work on the street. And so I thought this was a great example, and it shows that art can't escape context, whether it's the venue, the social or political climate, or in the case of theater, just the mindset that the audience comes in with when they come to see a performance is their context. And that context is what gives art its meaning or relevancy or not in a given moment. And so, and someone created this diagram too, which I thought was really interesting, is that art's at the center of craft, which is obviously the skills of the artist, content, which is what they're doing, and context, and in the center is what you create. And I thought that was really interesting because it shows that art can't exist without all those things working together. And so it's going to get more interesting, I promise. And it's going to. So I had kind of taken context for granted. As you know, you're an artist, you exist in America, in Sacramento, in your community, in your circle. And so your context is kind of a given thing, right? It's often not something you think about very often. And so Rebecca mentioned that I had the opportunity to travel to India, and context did not really hit me until I was outside of my comfort zone of my own context. And that's really what I really want to talk about today. And so in the summer, I did produce a 3-city international tour to India that I did not get to go on. So that was kind of a bummer. But then in the summer of 2016, I was fortunate enough to receive a grant from our own Point West Rotary to observe the work of an Indian theater company in Mumbai who is producing an original musical about the life of Mahatma Gandhi. And the purpose of the grant was I was going to go over, observe this production in order to bring back an adaptation for our B Street audiences for our family series stage that would teach students and families about Gandhi's contribution to our own national movements, as well as like passive resistance, peaceful protesting, obviously very pertinent topics nowadays. And I sort of naively thought I was going to go to India, go to rehearsals, watch the production, take notes, just get the information that I needed. And I knew that certain parts of the trip would be challenging, most specifically the 16-hour flight. But I thought that being at the theater itself would give me a sense of comfort because I was so used to being in a theater. But instead, I got a completely different experience that I think really helped me consider cultural context. So when I saw the theater in Mumbai, this is the theater, looked pretty much like a theater, right? Pretty standard. Seats, stage, artists, technicians, staff standing around on stage, figuring out how they're going to make the set work. And it was pretty standard stuff. However, out in India, it was a much different experience. My first few days in the city, I had trouble leaving my Airbnb, which is like the most American white thing I've ever said. But I couldn't really leave for more than a few hours at a time. It was monsoon season. The culture shock was so extreme for me. And if anybody's traveled internationally, specifically not to a Western country, I'm sure you can relate to this. I looked totally different from everybody else. They stared at me. I didn't know how to get anywhere. So these are some pictures that I pulled because I just had never, like that's a chapati kitchen and that's someone's home where they also sell electronics. And I just had never seen these things before. There were water buffalo crossing the street. And it was totally outside of my context. And then I had the jet lag. And so it was just, everything was overwhelming to me. And everybody who had been to India, who I talked to, or other countries similar, they told me how affecting it could be in terms of challenging your own context and your own worldview. But I just kind of was like, oh, that won't happen to me, I guess. That was my point of view. But it was extreme. You know, the disparity within their class system, the vast number of languages and cultures that exist in just a 5-mile radius. You can walk like a couple kilometers in Mumbai and be in an area that speaks a totally different language than where you just were. And obviously the typical social norms are really different. And I could talk just entirely about this experience, but it was actually the experience in India and not the experience in the theater that gave me the context for this production about Gandhi. Because when I first went to rehearsal, it was just like another play to me, something that I do every single day. But the context of being in India made me realize that it is so much more than that. Gandhi, for them, is their founding father. He gave them freedom, and he strived to create peace and equality. It's something that they still really struggle with today, and they revere him and they idolize him, but like us, they want to understand his humanity. And during the performances, the audiences, they would clap and cheer and comment and say certain famous quotes along with the figures. And I was reminded of a little-known musical we call Hamilton. And because as I watched their production, I realized that the fact that something like Hamilton, that everyone knows what that is probably, right? The only reason that has meaning to us is because it's within our context. When I asked people in India if they'd heard of Hamilton, they were like, yeah, I've heard of it, but I don't really care. Because it's not within their context of our knowledge of America's founding fathers is what gives Hamilton meaning and excitement. And I realized that my job as an international artist is to provide context for these works. You can't just take a piece and bring it over here and transplant it, just like you can't just take Hamilton and put it there and expect that it's going to have the same meaning, because it's about the context for the audience. And so I was just like, how can I create the right context so that a musical about Gandhi, which I thought it's really interesting, you can see that they're kind of doing the same gesture in these photos. This is the musical about Gandhi on the right, and this is Hamilton on the left. So how can you make that have the same meaning in America as a piece about Alexander Hamilton and George Washington and our revolutionaries? It's as I think about Gandhi at B Street, and as I think about everything that I do as a theater artist and a creative in this community, I think about how to shape context, and I don't have the answer. I wish that I did. But sometimes I think that context can be shaped by dialogue, music, storytelling, and sometimes I think, like this, that people have to be informed, but really what I think is that it's our job as creatives and artists and storytellers to just think about it and not assume that everyone has the right context to give something meaning, and think about how you can help to shape that for them. And then I started, because when I released that burden of creating the perfect context and just the journey of trying to find it and seeking it out, I felt like I was on the right track, because if I know that it doesn't just have the same meaning to American audiences as it does to Indian audiences, and I know that Hamilton isn't the most important thing to everyone else in the world like it is to us, then I can really help to shape context and bring people into that. And so then I did this, and so that's their production, which is pretty amazing. And then that's the graphic for our production, which is actually going to be the inaugural family series show at our new facility on Capitol Avenue, just a few blocks away. And so I was really fortunate enough to be able to see this amazing work and experience it, and also experience India. And I am hoping that I can bring that context to my own work. And that's it. Thank you all. Thank you so much.